Welcome back to our Triad Symposium from Bossier City, Louisiana. I'm Peter Husey, and I just want to say those are extraordinary remarks from General Ray. Thank you, sir. And we are very fortunate next to have a great friend of us. With us today, retired Major General Garrett Harencak. He's been a regular speaker at the Mitchell Institute Capitol Hill Breakfast Series for many years. He is now Vice President for Jacobs Engineering Group in Colorado Springs. He spent 28 years in the Air Force, retiring as a Major General and Commander of the Air Force Recruiting Service. And before his final U.S. Air Force assignment, he was the Air Force Assistant Chief of Staff for Strategic Deterrence and Nuclear Integration. He is a command pilot with more than 3,000 flying hours. He has flown all three of the Air Force's strategic bombers, the B-52, the B-1, and the B-2. General Harencak, on behalf of the Mitchell Institute, Cyber Innovation Center, Louisiana Tech Research Institute, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. Let me start by asking you to speak about what you have often described as a nuclear holiday, which the U.S. took after the end of the Cold War, and what the consequences of that nuclear nap, as some have described it. And then, time permitting, I'd like to ask you a few additional questions. And those of you who are watching this presentation can use the comment feature to type in questions during the presentation, and I will try to pick out a couple of these questions for our speaker. With that, over to you, General Harencak.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be part of this awesome event, and thank you, Peter, for giving me the opportunity to talk here for 3 to 5 hours. Really appreciated the opportunity. And I tell you, greetings from beautiful Colorado Springs. Wish I could be there in Louisiana with you, but we're going to have to do this virtually today. It certainly is a great opportunity. I want to talk a little bit today about the consequences of nuclear procurement modernization holidays, which I believe mostly my entire career I was part of. And I think this idea that there is a nuclear procurement modernization holiday that we have been in for decades is one we need to discuss now and make sure that it becomes the last one we've had. Most of my entire career was in a nuclear procurement holiday. 1983, I was commissioned. 1984, I'm in pilot training, and 10.6% of the DoD budget went to the nuclear enterprise. Even at the very peak, if we get everything we need and everything we want, at the very peak of our procurement modernization, which would probably peak around 2030, it would only be about 6.4%. And normally there's a slide. I didn't bring any slides. I'm sure you've seen them. This incredible trough between our nuclear enterprise resources that we were putting in as late as the early 80s until now. That's the procurement and modernization holiday I want to talk about. And I want to talk about the consequences of it, which I believe are long lasting and quite frankly, we're probably never in our lifetimes are going to be able to overcome all of the negative effects of that procurement holiday. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what brought us to this procurement holiday and what motivates those people that want us to stay in a holiday mode. And there's a lot of very complex reasons for that. But I want to focus on certainly those in the anti-nuclear modernization, anti-nuclear folks. Obviously, for years, and I don't even know that it's still a thing, the Global Zero folks, the plowshares, the people who have advocated against our nuclear triad and what our nuclear deterrence posture. And I want to be very clear about it. I've met many of them over the years, debated them, and I want to be clear. I find them to be earnest, educated, patriotic. I'm sure they love their families, they love their dogs. They're good people. they're just wrong. And they tend to propagate an emotional argument, mainly centered around what I call 5 myths. And many of you perhaps have heard me as given a 5 myths talk over the years. And I just want to quickly go over them to set the stage for how we came to this area that where we found ourselves 4 decades in a nuclear procurement and modernization holiday. And of course, these 5 myths, these attacks against a strong nuclear deterrent normally center around the very first one, which is, hey, we have these weapons that we spend an enormous amount of money on, and we could be using that money for other things because we never use nuclear weapons. And of course, that's I always put that as number one because that's the most false of them all. Obviously, we use our nuclear deterrent each and every day. It's the only series of weapon systems. It's the only thing that we do use every day. Certainly in my lifetime, there have been many times when ships haven't sallied out of port, when tanks haven't rolled their treads, when there hasn't been a bomber anywhere airborne that particular day, or fighters, or we haven't used bayonets. But there has never once been a day in any of our lifetimes where we have not used our nuclear weapons, and that is for the deterrent. So that's the normal one, and we always hesitate, in my view, for those that need to engage and advocate. We hesitate to talk about that. And as we talk, as we go on talking, we need to make sure that we meet that emotional argument with the reason and the facts. We use these weapons every single day. So which leads us to the second one, which of course always comes up. Well, they're too expensive anyway. There was a recent meeting that many members of Congress went to, Plowshares, other organizations, and they came up with a fantastical. It was focused mainly on GBSD, and in their view, why we don't need to do that, and they came up with, in my view, a fantastical sum of money that it was going to cost. Their number was $260 billion, which of course I have no idea where they came up with that money, where they came up with that. It's obviously not going to cost that much, and we certainly we can talk later in the question and answer why I believe that won't be the case. It won't be anywhere near that. But they came up with a cost, and they said that all the ways, all the speakers talked about how they could better use that money. And it all goes again to one of the myths that our nuclear deterrent is too expensive, which of course, if you really look at the facts and you answer that with reason and with knowledge and with the facts, you realize that our nuclear deterrent is not too expensive. It's even at the peak recap, as we talked about at 2030, most estimates show that it would only be about 3.7% of the DoD budget, and that's for the entire triad. So there's that it isn't, but also I always ask people when they say too expensive for what? To protect this great nation, to protect our way of life, our families, everything, to protect our allies against the only existential threat that exists to this nation, and that is the nuclear threat. The third is, and so my point before I move on is what price tag do you want to put on it? What price tag do you want? First of all, it is not when you look at the percentage, when you look at the total DoD budget, there's no way you could say that it is too expensive. But more importantly, it protects us against the only existential threat. And there's just no way I see how you could put any type of legitimate cap on the cost to protect that. But it isn't really that expensive anyway. Next is subs can do it all. We hear that a lot. Let me be very clear here. Garrett Harencak here, I'm telling you, and we need 12 Columbia class nuclear deterrent submarines. I mean, we need them. They need to be built. The triad's importance cannot be underestimated in any way. All three legs of this triad are complementary to each other. They provide unique and complementary attributes. Certainly, subs are incredibly important. And I've advocated, when I was in uniform as the A-10 of the Air Force, I've always advocated for the Navy that we need 12 Columbia-class submarines to replace their very aging Ohio-class subs, which are well over their service lives. Obviously, we need to do it, but subs cannot do it all. They can't do it all for a host of reasons, but if just the very basic tenets of nuclear deterrence, the ability to show resolve. How do you show resolve with a sub? If you only have subs, should we send out a press release and say, hey, I'm going to show resolve, so everybody turn their satellites to a particular place in the ocean, we'll surface the subs, we'll open the tubes, and they go, there's resolve. How do you do that? Also, how do you prevent adversaries out there from taking all of their resources now to focus on the one part of our deterrent, and of course now you have all the adversaries going after our very stealthy subs, and they are, but the oceans will not always be 100% stealthy as related to subs. So subs cannot do it all. They're very, very important. And we cannot do what we need to do to defend this nation, nuclear deterrent wise, without 12 Columbia class submarines, but they can't do them all. Fourth, we hear all the time, and we heard at this, whatever summit it was recently that I referred to, where they talked about GBSD, their little conference, and they said once again, one of the speakers remarked that, oh, well, we're stuck in a Cold War. We hear that all the time, and of course we're not stuck in a Cold War. The facts are we've reduced 85% of our nuclear arsenal since the end of the Cold War. I normally turn that argument around to the people who say that, well, it's you who are stuck in the Cold War. It's you who do not recognize that there are other potential adversaries out there that besides just the USSR, the old USSR, there that make our strategic nuclear deterrent even more important today. But when we're not stuck in the Cold War, a lot of what flows out of that is, well, conventional cyber, they can take the place of a nuclear deterrent. Certainly, I don't believe any reasoned person would believe that there isn't tremendous value in deterrent value in our conventional and in our cyber capabilities. They are, however, complementary. They are other tools that we have. They in no way can replace our nuclear triad and our nuclear deterrent. It's just not true. I used to have to deal with that all the time. I still hear it, and I tell the story when I was at Whiteman Air Force Base, we got a mock-up of the big Moab bomb. If you remember that, it's the conventional 22,000 bomb. I mean, it's just, and we were doing, it was a plywood mock-up, but we were doing some tests to see how we could be able to load it into the B-2. And I'll tell you, as a conventional weapon, as a bomber pilot, I mean, I love that sucker. I mean, it was in one of our hangars. I wanted us to, it's an incredibly important tool, conventional tool for us. I wanted to have a family Christmas picture in front of it. Tanya said we couldn't. The point is it is an incredible weapon. But when people would say, see, look at this, you don't need these nukes, I'd have to explain it. I'd go to a whiteboard and I would make a big circle, and I'd say, okay, this is the effect, for example, of the largest nuke in our inventory. And then I'd say, let me tell you what the effect of the first weapons we had, that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it's, of course, a much smaller weapon. And I said, here is the effect of this incredibly important tool of this giant 22,000 pound bomb. And I would just put a small, very dot inside the smaller circle. That is pretty close to the dimensions that you talk about the effects. It just doesn't compare. As important as everything we do in cyber is, and we need to be the absolute leaders in this nation in cyber conflict and cyber defense, it just is not the same. And yet you hear it time and time again. We're stuck in a Cold War. It's not about nukes now because of all of our conventional capabilities and our cyber. Oh, we don't need these weapons. That's false. And in my view, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. The last is the last one we use, and you don't hear it quite as much as you have in the past, but you still hear that, hey, at some point nukes are going to go away anyway. So they're gonna go away, and so let's just keep what we got, even though they're way beyond their service life. Let's just keep what we got because hopefully very soon nukes are all going to go away. And here's how I on that. And I kind of famously got into a kerfuffle a few years ago when I gave a speech. It might have been at one of Peter's events, actually. I was kind of trying to use a little bit of humor in responding to that. And I said, hey, perhaps I'll be wrong. And somehow we are going to all come together as a world community. And we are going to renounce nuclear weapons voluntarily, and it's going to be verifiable, and everyone's going to be able to get rid of it. And when I'm wrong, I'm going to admit it, and I'm going to throw the biggest party at my house, and we're going to have everybody come over, and we'll have all types of hors d'oeuvres and everything. I just ask that when you're at that party, you don't serve the hors d'oeuvres to my unicorns in my backyard. Lots of people found that not to be funny. I thought it was because they said, oh, you're making fun of the people who are working so hard to rid the world of nuclear weapons. Here's the problem with that fantastical, although highly wonderful idea that we rid the world of. Here's what would have to happen, in my view. There must be then a fundamental change in human nature. In human nature. Voluntarily, for the good of others and everyone would have to renounce a weapon or tool that gives power. And I simply ask, when in the history of our species has that ever happened? Did we do it with spears? Did we do it with crossbows? Did we do it with battleships? When has it happened? Because the problem with this is that human nature must be changed. We are not wired that way, not in business, not in warfare, not in day-to-day life. It's just, is it something we should aspire to? Certainly, certainly. Is it something that has a remote possibility of happening? No, it's just not going to happen. It's possible. It's just nowhere near likely, because what has to change is human nature. And I don't see it. You see these myths that are propagated by those that put us into this nuclear procurement and nuclear modernization holiday. They're emotional arguments, and they're hard to fight an emotional argument. Is anybody that has a family knows, right? I mean, emotional arguments are really, truly hard to fight, but we have to try. We have to engage. We have to advocate, and we have to do it with reason, with knowledge, and with facts. And that's what these types of forums, people always ask, oh, you're doing a triad meeting again. Didn't you guys do that last year? Didn't you? You know, what are you guys going to talk about? Talk about the same thing. No, this is important because it needs to galvanize all of us to engage and advocate with the reason and knowledge and facts to make sure that this nation makes the right decisions when it comes to modernizing our strategic deterrent. And I see there's three main consequences of nuke holidays, and I'll go through these relatively quickly because I think they're self-evident. One is the loss of human capital that has occurred. You know, I used to say as the commander of recruiting service, you know, I had the most important job in the world. Why? Because I was responsible for bringing the greatest weapon system this nation has on board. The greatest weapon system we have does not come with a tail number. The greatest weapon system we have does not come with a serial number. It comes with a social security number. It is the people that are going to ensure the ultimate defense and survivability of this great nation for centuries to come. And our nuclear holiday has cost us dearly in human capital. People who should have been working as a career in the nuclear modernization and recapitalization business don't exist. I asked a simple question, you know, when's the last time we did a major nuclear certification of a major weapon system? Of course, it was the B-2. How many of those people that were responsible and did the nuclear certification in the early 90s for the B-2 are still around? Raise your hand if you're still one of those. There may be a few. I guarantee you they are all AARP members. I guarantee you that it's going to be difficult to find the expertise we need. We'll find it. We'll get it done to nuke certify the Columbia class, to nuke certify the GBSD. It is a loss of human capital that is so many times underrepresented, in my view, of the consequences of our nuclear holidays. As we build these, as we hopefully get very much into our nuclear modernization efforts, I will tell you, and I'll tell you now from industry, it's hard finding cleared, experienced people. It's going to be difficult. It's going to cost us companies a lot of money because we're going to have to pay a lot of money. We're going to have to poach each other. It's hard to find all that people. We lost an entire generation of people with the expertise needed for our nuclear modernization. So loss of human capital is very big. Lack of robust technology and innovation, advancements and enhancements. Yes, thanks to NNSA's great work in stockpile stewardship, thanks to the great work of so many of us that have toiled in the nuclear enterprise over the last decades, we have been able to keep a safe, secure, and effective stockpile and delivery systems. We have. They're safe, they're secure, and they're effective. But how much better could they have been? And I always use this analogy of take a 1961 Corvette, okay? So, we've got this 1961 Corvette that we want to keep running, but we want to make it a little more safe, secure, and effective. So, what do? Well, we take an aftermarket an alarm system, you throw it on. Maybe you put the club on the steering wheel. You take the drum brakes off and you put analog disc brakes on. Maybe you do that. And then, to easily navigate a little more, you put a little holder for your cell phone in there. Now you got Google Maps and you go, okay, well, my 61 Corvette is now a little bit more safe, a little more secure, and a little bit more effective. Is it really as safe, secure, and effective and cost effective, by the way, as a 2021 Corvette? Of course not. Why? Because Chevrolet for the last 50 years has been making those Corvettes more safe, more secure, more effective, moving it along. So that's like cell phones are another way. If you bought a cell phone, I bought Tanya a cell phone in the early 90s. Cost me like $600 on a majors pack. It sometimes made a call. It sometimes answered calls. And it was the size of a small cat. But what if we had stopped? What if we had taken a cell phone holiday, procurement holiday, and cell phone modernization holiday? Look at what you could do with phones here. My point is the missed opportunities we had to do things that were very cost effective that would have ultimately made these weapon systems and these weapons incredibly more safe, secure, and effective. We didn't, of course, because we lacked the technological and innovational advancements and enhancements that would have naturally occurred because we took the holiday. Last is of course, I always say, sure, we took this procurement holiday, but more disastrous to us, in my view, was we took an intellectual holiday. Cadets of the Air Force Academy, Naval Academy didn't study nuclear deterrence like they should have. We didn't train nuclear engineers, I don't want to get into all the problems of what happened when we as an Air Force stopped intellectually focusing on the nuclear deterrent and the nuclear enterprise. You all know what happened in 2007 and other things. There's lots of bad things because we did not focus on it. Happily, all that has been turned around. Thank you to Global Strike. Thank you to so many other. Now there's a nuclear major at the Air Force Academy. There are some great progress we made, but it was painful, and we paid a huge price for that intellectual holiday that we took. So, in conclusion here, I want to wrap this up. Emotion cannot drive this debate. We cannot afford as a nation for this holiday mode to continue in any way, in any form. So we have to engage and advocate, all of us together who care about this and who know the importance of it. Industry, I'm in industry now. Industry, hey, you're involved. Oh yeah, I support. Hey, get more involved. Okay. Be loud and proud of your contribution to our nuclear deterrent and what needs to be done for that. The military, hey, let your friends in. Let industry in. Tell us what you need us to do. Give us the office calls. Okay. Talk to us. You're not going to get fired. Okay. We need to know industry-wise what your priorities are, when those priorities are important to you, so we could do our job to educate the American public to go out there and advocate and engage. So I'm a little over time, but those of you who know me know that's not changed. I'll tell you a quick story. For you got time for a story? Great. Okay. I used to talk to every SOS class about nuclear stuff and everything else. And in SOS, they always give you 45 minutes and then 15 minutes. So you get an hour, no matter who you are. You could be president of a university, you have 45 minutes, 15 minutes. I always went an hour and 15 minutes. And so finally, right before I retired, the wonderful commandant that was there, he said, you know what, General, we give up. We're giving you an hour and 15 minutes. You're the first speaker ever to get an hour and 15 minutes. That day I went an hour and a half. So it just goes to show, sucks to be you. Don't trust me when it comes to time. So with that, Peter, I send it over to you. And thank you, everybody, for listening to me rant at you.
Well, thank you, General Harencak, for that very low-key, modest presentation. It is always great to hear you. I've got a couple questions. The first one is, you first talked about a nuclear holiday, both a procurement holiday and a holiday from thinking about nuclear weapons. You've talked about that in your presentation today. Are we in danger of continuing that holiday today? Have you addressed go ahead.
I will talk a little bit. We did, after the Cold War specifically, there was just, you all remember the kind of the euphoria when, the Berlin Wall fell and, oh my gosh, we're all done. I was about to go on alert and B1s, and that we got taken off that week. I was like, oh my gosh, we threw a big party at the alert facility at Dyess Air Force Base. I think you were there, Jeff. It was a great party, and we just had this feeling that we won. It's over. I mean, oh my gosh, it was a great party, right? But that was the feeling. The party's on. We've won. It's over. Obviously, the world didn't quite change in the direction we thought there was. So I believed it too. I believed that we were on a path here that we weren't going to need the nuclear posture, the nuclear deterrence that we did. Obviously, it didn't take long to realize that the world peace didn't break out quite as we expected. I think that the main thing there was we just kind of, especially as military folks, we said, okay, that mission is won. We've destroyed that target. Let's move the pipper on to the next target now and move on. What's the next thing? And so while that was a natural reaction, I think we went way too far in dismantling the intellectual and training and thought of the nuclear deterrence in the United States military, and we all know where that led. In 2007, the unauthorized transfer at Minot, the highest ranking nuclear person was an 06 and the Pentagon, and was buried deep in the A3 in the A3 thing. And I got to tell you, no one saw a problem with that, right? Until we saw the problem that this intellectual holiday that we took caused our great Air Force and in my view, our nation. So it's this intellectual holiday. I think we've come so far from those days, but I will also tell you that when I was commander of the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center, there was a move afoot to get rid of the Nuclear Weapons Center. I mean, it only existed at the time for 2 commanders, me and the wonderful general before me, and yet there was talk that we should probably get rid of this. Right? There was a move afoot and a reorganization of the air staff just a few years ago, and there was talk that we didn't need the A-10. So what do we do it, right? I mean, it was crazy. I was the 3rd A-10, and they were already talking about, well, do we really need it? We could move these people to all around. So my point is while we are so far ahead of where we are, we've made such huge movements. This is like when you take your kids to Chuck E. Cheese, right? What's the worst game at Chuck E. Cheese? It's whack-a-mole, because your pizza's getting cold, your beer's getting warm, and the game never ends. And engaging and advocating for the nuclear enterprise is whack-a-mole. There is no finish line. We must always be vigilant, and we must always go, because just because we've recovered from the intellectual holiday, it doesn't mean that there's not another one coming around the corner.
The last question I wanted to ask you, General, is many in the disarmament and arms control community want to get rid of ICBMs and the long-range strike option cruise missile, but do so unilaterally. What is your view of how that would affect our allies?
I was surprised at the number of people that were, and the question is, many disarmament and arms control advocates want to get rid of ICBMs, we know that, and LRSO. Can you explain the consequences of these actions? There's so much mythology around both of those, okay? And obviously, this forum, you know the value of both of those. Obviously, without ICBMs, oh my gosh, the target list of an adversary comes down to 5. I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous. I don't believe in any way. I think, well, yes, as I previously said, we have to always engage and advocate and be on guard about it. I think most reasonable people understand the importance of the ICBMs and what they bring and the utmost need to modernize them. I always am a little bit surprised, though, about those people who are so against LRSO. The whole reason, I think that people in the United States military exist and the weapon systems we have is to make sure that nowhere around the world is there sanctuary for our enemies. And quite frankly, without LRSO, we will have to accept the fact that there potentially could be a number of sanctuaries out there. We must always be able to hold, regardless of geography, a target anywhere in the world at risk to defend this nation, to defend our families, to defend our way of life. Without LRSO, you open yourself up to sanctuaries where you can't do it. I'm a career bomber pilot. I believe the bomber will always get through, but why should we risk it? why wouldn't you want to give the president options? Options are good. Options lead to good decisions that we can use to defend our people. And you know, a lot of the my favorite LRSO anti-allies. Well, the enemy wouldn't know if that's a nuke or it's not a nuke. You know, since I was a lieutenant, I think if you'd run the numbers, we've done well over 350 conventional strikes with cruise missiles. There's never been any enemy out there that was confused as to whether those were nuclear or conventional. That is a red herring argument. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, we're only going to apply a nuclear, you know, the LRSO in an environment where nuclear deterrence is working. It's a silly argument. LRSO is important because it prevents any sanctuaries in the world, and no reasonable military professional or civilian leader could ever want an area of the world that cannot be taken and taken on. So LRSO is just incredibly important, relatively inexpensive for the options it gives us and our allies. And let's not forget that. We sometimes forget so many times that there are allies out there that believe our nuclear deterrent will also be there for them. And with LRSO, that happens.
Thank you, General Harencak, for taking the time to speak with us today and share your insights. And on behalf of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, the Cyber Innovation Center, and Louisiana Tech Research Institute, I want to thank you for taking part in this symposium and for your remarks.